questions. So welcome to Beyond the Collar, everybody. My name is Natalie, and this is Mary, my co-slave, and we share the same master. So Mary came to me with the idea of Beyond the Collar a couple of months ago. It must have been, how many months now? Maybe 4 or 5 months? Sorry, I'm just admitting people
It's kind of
as I'm
insane to think
introducing.
about. We've been doing this since April.
Yeah, it's insane to think about how long we've been doing it, but even more insane, for lack of a better word, to think about how much we've grown in terms of conversations. And for me personally, talking in a public setting like this is like ridiculous. Like, Kat has seen me from the beginning in terms of my public speaking and talking in front of people, and I would cry almost immediately. So this is kind of a big deal. So welcome to Beyond the Collar. People are funneling in. I'm just gonna introduce that again, and I'm gonna go over some housekeeping. Oh, I didn't even finish. So Mary came to me with the idea of Beyond the Collar a couple of months ago. It had been a couple of weeks or a month or so after we had been really focusing on our relationship and building our relationship and having the deeper and heavier discussions that come with growing and evolving relationship. And she decided, we both decided that we would open up the conversation to everybody else, and so that we could, both decided that we would open up the conversation to everybody else, and so that we could come from and where we've grown, and so that we can look and see also how we can evolve and change and make the conversation and the community of Beyond the Collar even better. So feel free to keep your camera on, and if you don't feel comfortable doing that, we will always have the chat open and you can answer any of the questions via the chat. What's next? So a couple of weeks ago we had some fun people come into our call and decide to have a party. So now we don't allow you to unmute yourselves, unfortunately. So if you want to answer a question verbally, just use the little raise your hand feature emoji thing, and we will unmute you and you will be able to share verbally. Is there anything else that I'm missing in terms of housekeeping, Mary? I know we've been having a discussion about altering. This is Miss Kitty Cat, by the way. She is the guest of today on the topic of dominant people are submissive to, which we did last month, and we are going to continue to do throughout the beginning of each month, each week. And last month was Master Joshua, so if you were here for that, we're going to be asking pretty similar questions with a couple of added bonus questions to the end that are in relation to the couple of topics about submission and submissive headspace that we're going to be talking about this month. So there's just a couple of questions at the end that we've altered and changed. But what I was going to say before that was we've been chatting a bit about how we've always said that we want people to, this space is for people to talk about submission and for people who are submissive to have a safe space to talk and to chat and to share perspective. And we've kind of always asked for, if you're a dominant or if you're somebody who identifies more closely and more in tune with dominance, to speak from a dominant, or from a submissive perspective. But we're altering that a bit as we evolve, and we're trying to figure out how and what is, from a submissive perspective. But we're altering that a bit as we evolve, and we're trying to figure out how and what is.
For sure. But I would love Mama, aka, to all of you, she's known as Miss Cat in the lifestyle. I call her Mama, so I will always refer to her as Mama during the call. But Mama, we always kick off our call with how we get closest to our subspace, and I think that that's a great intro call for you, and a great intro question to start you off on. So how do you best connect to your submissive space?
When you say submissive headspace, you just mean For me, a submissive headspace, I think, has to do more with service than anything, right? So when I'm serving, which I do a lot of the time, whether it's I'm cooking for people or I'm organizing things or, sometimes when I'm just in a room and people are doing whatever it is they're doing and I'm just there sort of holding space for people to do whatever it is they need or want to do, all those things bring me closer to what I think one would call a submissive headspace. I mean, besides the obvious to do, all those things bring me closer to what I think one would call a submissive headspace. I mean, besides the obvious like play area of it, the service stuff, and I do a lot of it. The obvious like play area of it, the service stuff, and I do a lot of it.
It always changes all the time. But as I say that all the time, I usually always go to service, but there's always something very specifically service oriented. Like this week and the past week, we've been reinventing the studio space at the Kink Collective downstairs, and it's been a lot of service oriented tasks of cleaning and organizing and making sure that photos are taken. And so that has really been putting me and connecting me to that service oriented part of myself, which is very intertwined with my submission. So again, defaulted to service, but it's true. Mary?
Oh man, I knew you were gonna come to me. Sorry, I was letting people in the room. I think it's been funny. Over the past week, I've been in such a dominant space because of all the projects at work. I gotta lay the law sometimes, guys. It's rough. But I've been coming home and cuddling with my stuffy, and I got this new horror blanket, and I find myself just wrapping and just sitting, and I'm usually conflicted with quiet, but it's been appreciative because there's been a lot of chaos in my life as of late. So sometimes the quiet has helped me just get more in tune with how my body's feeling, just reconnecting with myself, because sometimes when I'm a little all over the place, I lose connection to back to me. Gotta pull back the reins sometimes, or I have my family help me pull back those reins sometimes as well. But I think the closest I've felt to subspace has been in my meditation, as I've been exploring that a bit more. It's new and it's exciting, but definitely not a familiar feeling, which has been new and interesting, all in the same breath.
Thank you for sharing. If there's anybody who wants to share what has been connecting them most to their submissiveness or submissive headspace, and I'm using all of these different terms because they're all loosely defined based off of what we think that they are, and we're going to really be digging deeper into what subspace is this month, and it's going to be a personal discovery, and I'm really looking forward to having to hear and look and being able to listen to what each person has to say about what their subspace is and what they think it is, and going into that. So if anybody doesn't want to answer what is what is connecting them the most to their submissiveness, I guess we can go into the questions.
Let's do it. It's all about Mama Cat today in our conversation.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you. I haven't had a chance to really sit in on these calls, and so I didn't even know that the headspace was an opening sort of salvo. So I'm excited just to see how the hour goes. So thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Or honored to have you.
Of course.
Sorry.
This was when we were creating the series, I wrote to Mama and I was like, hey, by the way, I'm gonna need you to come on and talk about your submissive side, and you have to be one of the first people that come and do that with us. So totally pumped you're here.
Thanks. So you said you have questions?
Yes, we have questions, and I think what we did last time was I asked one and then Mary asked one, so we're gonna go back and forth.
Okay.
So the first one is very difficult. An introduction. Introduce yourself. What is your name?
Okay.
Where are you from? And what was your introduction to the kink community? I wonder who came up with that question.
So my name is Kat. I'm originally from New York. by way of California, Illinois, and Florida, and obviously back in New York again. I've always suspected that I was a little off, but I got involved in kink when I lived in California. I want to say 30 years ago, 20 plus however many years ago, when I got sober, and that there was enough freedom in my mind to say, these impulses that I've had, this interest that I've had in these things and curiosity, I'm finally feeling free enough now to explore. And so there is a kink community in San Francisco, and I was able to connect with essentially the gay men's leather community out there. I was lucky enough to get a mentor who let me come. He had events, and so I would go to events, and then he would take me around and show me what, how people were when they were playing, and I learned a lot. He showed me what was safe and how to do events that had bodily fluids or not, or what safe words were. I just got so much education from this man, and a sense of community from the events that he held, that he hosted, that I feel fortunate for what my beginning, or what my first step into any kind of kink community was.
That's awesome. And what are you doing now with all of that knowledge?
Trying to pass it on. try to, we do all the things we're doing in the Kink Collective, right? Hosting events and trying to do education and trying to have people be able to step into the community themselves and feel safe and comfortable and have the kind of guidance that they need to have to feel safe and comfortable. So I feel like I try to pay it forward.
And you absolutely do. I'm excited to ask this question. So, as I scroll, what is one thing you wish those outside of the lifestyle understood about your submission? And how about your dynamics?
I wished I'd had this cheat sheet of questions before I got here.
So did Pastor Joshua, who's sitting right here when he did this call. But alas,
what's one thing that I wish people knew about my submission? I think that I wish people understood that it's just, at least for me anyway, it's just part of a continuum of expression, right? Submission is just a part of who I am, just like dominance, just like mama, just like, a caretaker, a leader, the chief cook and bottle washer, they're just all part of the big spectrum of who I am as a person. It's just part of. Was there another part of that question I missed?
The second part being what do you wish people that are outside our lifestyle felt about your dynamics as well? Is there anything different and specific to your dynamics?
No, I don't necessarily think that anybody outside of my dynamic, I don't care what people know or think. I mean, I'm in the relationships I'm in, I have the dynamics that I have, and I don't necessarily need anyone to know anything about them at all. Or not. I mean, it's not like people can't know about it. I just don't necessarily feel like anyone has to know anything. That doesn't sound
no, that
totally
makes sense.
Off-putting.
But what would you share if people had no idea about what submission was, or dynamics within polyamory or submission were like?
Well, I think that it's important that every relationship have its own sense of itself. Right? We can talk in blanket terms about what does it mean to be in a DS and MS, all these different dynamics, but at the end of the day, these are just people. We're just people being in relationships with one another. And I think every relationship is as different as there are people to be in them. And that, Mary, you and I have our dynamic, we have our relationship. And you call me mama and I call you my baby, but is it the same as everyone else's? Can I say that what our relationship looked like is some sort of poster child for mama-baby relationships? I don't know, and I don't think so. I think that it's what you and I have, and it's special and precious, and I feel like that about all of the relationships that I have, where there's stated dynamics or even where there's not. Like I have relationships that have dynamics as part of them, but they're not a stated, committed power exchange or power dynamic that has a title and, you know, names and all of that business. They're just, it's like some of the qualities that exist inside of the relationships that I have.
I love that.
No, me too. It's important. We're just people.
Yeah, and so it isn't because I wouldn't share with people about it. It's just that I don't think that there's any, for me anyway, there's no blanket way. I don't have anything like, if you look up in a book and you look up you know, this kind of power exchange, like my picture and my relationships don't show up in any of those books. They don't look like any of the things that people expect those things to look like. And I'm okay with that.
For sure, and I see a lot of head shaking. Like, it's resonating with a lot of our community as well. You want to hit her with the next question, Matt?
Yes. Can you tell me more about what submission means to you personally? How did you discover and explore your own submissive desires?
Well, I've been aware of submissive desires, and I'll be honest, I mean, a lot of mine were very tied into submissive desires, and I'll be honest, I mean, a lot of mine were very tied into
What?
yeah, but I engage on both sides of the slash with people, right? Like, and that's evolved. Like the evolution has been getting okay with not having to define myself in any particular way. Knowing that I have dominant energy, that I have submissive energy, that I have dominant needs and submissive needs, and I can meet them with the people in my life in whatever way works for me at a time. And to get to there meant I had to get rid of stereotypes. I had to get rid of things that I thought were a certain kind of way or had to be a certain kind of way, or trying to, you know, I spent some time trying to fit square pegs in round holes, and so some of that was just about giving all of that up. And at first it felt like failure, right? Because I didn't find the dominant person. But then I realized that it was like an opportunity to evolve into just being a person who lives in this lifestyle, who has all of the different needs and wants, and in the relationships where I find them. I don't know if that answered the question.
No, it does, and it leads us into a beautiful segue to the next question that Mary's going to ask.
I was gonna say, so Mama, if you haven't caught on, a lot of our questions are walking you through the stages of the conversations that we've had thus far. So we've walked you through the intro and really connecting with the submissive space. And then we held a conversation, I want to say it was like June, where we spoke about titles and labels. So this question is, what roles or titles do you connect with most in your submissive space?
If any.
Can I say none? Can I say none and get away with that?
What was the question?
Yeah.
The question
Titles.
is, what roles or titles do you connect with most in your submissive space?
I don't know. I connect with Mama.
Listen,
Right? Like,
that
Well,
works.
no, I mean, there are like I connect from my point of view. When we're intimate, there's times where the power exchange that we choose to engage in is evident, obvious. One is more dominant, one is more submissive, and in that role, when you are in your submissive role, it allows you to access a part of yourself, a role that you encompass, an expression that you inhabit. That is a four-letter word, and it starts with S, right?
oh, well, okay.
Right. So, but it's a particular.
Because we're on all kinds of social media, and I don't know how much of this is okay to talk about, but my submission manifests itself most clearly in the sexual realm. Right? Like that's where, like, I am happy to be and to go.
And in service.
And in service also. It's weird though, my service, the service that I feel like I do comes from like a nurturing mama mommy dom sort of a headspace and sort of a place, because it's a caretaking in a healthy way. It's a wanting to care for the people that are around me, and I have a fairly large skill set when it comes to caring and service, right? So we were talking on the earlier call about confidence, right? And for me, it's, like, I am competent in this realm because I have a lot of skills around it. But that headspace, the service headspace for me is very different than the sexual submissive headspace. I think that the one that's in that realm, I feel like we're gonna get in trouble if I keep saying the word, but that's that place where I can really let go, where I can, like, sort of relinquish control and have that more stereotypical experience of submission that I think people think about or talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And as you were sharing, Lizzie has shared, as you progress through kink, the labels you assign fall away. You understand the boxes we put each other in aren't accurate. It's a spectrum. Titles, roles, and identifying language becomes less and less important. At least that is how I feel, I think. And
You said that in way less words than I did. Thank you. And way more eloquently.
Said that they definitely resonate with you.
It's because she's a day ahead, so she's, in Australia. She's had an extra day to
process.
train her brain.
I love that.
That's cool.
Welcome from down under.
Okay, shall we go to the next question?
Wow, I can't read from here, but that's a long list of questions. Holy cow.
In the hot seat, Mama.
Yes.
You got
I'm seriously in the
35
hot
more
seat.
minutes of answering questions. So the next question is, what needs to be in place in your relationships for you to be able to feel safe and share your submissive side?
I need to feel safe, for sure. And I don't know that anyone wouldn't, but I also need to feel like everything's taken care of, right? If I'm going to spend a period of time allowing myself to really be in a submissive headspace, I need to know that all of the other life stuff is taken care of. I need to know that, like, something's not coming up in the middle of it, for which Mama has to come back up out of the ether and, like, handle some shit like that. I need to know that's not going to happen for me to relax and allow myself to really be in that space. It's a very luxury sort of a headspace for me. It's a very luxury experience because it doesn't happen that often. I don't do it that often. I don't get to go there that often. And, like, the deck needs to be cleared for me to be comfortable with that.
What helps you to feel safe other than like as a prerequisite to, like, you're in a relationship and in order to feel submissive you have to have your slate?
And, well, like, negotiation, right? I need to know that whatever I'm engaging in, like, that me and whoever, like, we're sort of on the same page, we're in the same headspace, we're in the same mindset for whatever it is we're going to be doing, for however long we're going to be doing it. And yeah, and that I think creates safety for me is a spoken about agreement. Like, we're going to do this, it's going to go like that. And also to know that, like, I can be myself, warts and all, like, that I'm not going to be judged. I think that's the thing. I need to feel like I'm not going to be judged or ridiculed or made fun of or any of those things.
That's fair.
100%. And I remember, like, the first time that I got to witness your submissive side, I remember us chatting through, like, getting ready for that type of play and experience together. And I remember when it happened, I was like, whoa, because it was so natural, like, of how it all flowed. But I could respect, though, that, like, that grounding conversation of, like, hey, so this is new, so this is what we're gonna do. But getting to experience anyone in their submissive nature and, like, watching them let go, and being either a fly or a piece of that experience is really beautiful to watch how the body kind of just goes into it, when there's nothing else. Like, when you're able to turn off the world, like you were saying, and, like, life's good, everything's cool, I'm gonna see you guys in a little bit. It was really cool to witness. And since this conversation's all about you, I figured I would add that little fun tidbit in.
Thanks.
And as we chat about fun and favorite things, remembering that we are on social platforms, what are your favorite aspects or activities of submission that you enjoy the most?
Oh, stop. You ask me another question. We'll get thrown off of TikTok in a second.
Okay, so that's sure. Let's move to the next one. Are there specific triggers or feelings that make you feel more submissive? Do you have any rituals or protocols that you enjoy? Interesting. I've never heard, because that seems it like puts like triggers in like a positive.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I can see that. There are some things, like I will, I'll put on a collar for play. So some things like that. Restraints help me during play, to feel that way. Playing with vet wrap. I'm trying to be really careful with the words that I use. I've had my head wrapped with vet wrap, and that brings on probably the deepest connection to subspace that I know. There's something very, very deeply. It moves me to a very deep level, and I've only done that a few times, and it's been profound in terms of what it feels like, the level of letting go that gets to happen when I do that.
That's awesome. And I'm glad that you said that very elegantly, so I love that. Are there desires you have as a submissive that you don't feel comfortable delivering as a dominant? If so, why?
Use a couple of different words for that question. I don't understand the question.
desires being modalities, types of play, words, labels.
Did I say the last part? Okay, now I know what you mean by that.
Are there desires you have as a submissive that you don't feel comfortable delivering as a dominant? If so, why?
Oh, things that I want to receive that I don't feel comfortable doing for other people?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Awesome.
No.
Awesome. Have you had any experiences or relationships in the past that have shaped your understanding of submission?
I mostly, the answer that comes to me most easily is I've had more experiences that have shaped my understanding of what it is not than what it is. And some of it has been, in my earlier years, my misguided attempts to engage in dynamics or engage in sort of behaviors with people or activities or whatever. Learning about things like topping from the bottom. Understanding that, like, how submissive am I really being? If I'm trying to run the show from the bottom, like, it doesn't really get it, right? When you're talking about genuine submission, right? Like, so my experiences have been more carving away the things that it isn't.
Do you have any other, like, almost revelatory, is that a word?
Yeah, it's a word.
Revelation-like experiences that you can share about getting to the point where you are now currently in your submission, your understanding of it?
I'll think about that for a second. I'll put that in the back of my mind for right now. I don't know if I have any, like, that revelatory, thing.
Yeah.
They've been like, everything's been in shades and degrees over the course of the time that I've, yeah.
Well, you're always welcome to come on next week and for 5 minutes and be like, this was the revelation, so.
I will even make sure if we have time at the end to touch on it for sure.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think we've done this a little bit, but define subspace. What does it mean to you? And there's a couple questions here. How does it manifest in your mind and body? What brings you closest? And it could be modalities, types of plays, rituals, tone of play, words, mind and body. What brings you closest? And it could be modalities, types of plays, rituals, tone of play, words, mind and body. What brings you closest? and it could be modalities, types of plays, rituals, tone of play, words.
Cozy right away, like in a oh my goodness, like it felt really good. What is subspace to me? My experience of subspace is sort of like a floaty, people call it floaty, not disconnected, but like a light feeling, like a light kind of free, like my critical faculties are reduced a little bit, which for me is a wonderful relief, right? Because I'm in my head almost all the time. And to be sort of freed from that for a little while is it's a nice relief, it's a nice respite from what everyday life feels like for me, right? So, and I just got to experience that on Saturday. It just lets me feel like everything's okay for a while, and I don't have to do anything, I don't have to be anything in order for everything to just be okay. And it's a nice feeling.
How is it different from a more service-oriented, submissive headspace? How is subspace different?
Well, it's the physiological component, right? When I'm service is it's almost like a mental focus, right? Whereas physical subspace is almost like a defocusing, right? Like I lose my focus in a way that feels like freeing, right? Where service submission is like, because I wanted to say this earlier when we were talking about it at the very beginning. Some of my service is to the God of my understanding, right? Like my primary dominant is the God of my understanding. That is beyond all things. I'm in my most submissive place when I am moving in the mindfulness that my job is to do the bidding of my creator, right? And so there's a singleness of purpose, a clarity of mind, a calmness that comes from when I'm in that space and I remember that that's my purpose. Am I there all the time? Absolutely not. You know, is it something I aspire to do more of or to be more in? Yes. But before I came onto this call, I went in the other room and I asked for me to remember to be of service, that this really isn't even about me, that to whatever degree anything I say could be helpful to someone is my reason to be here.
Well, thank you
That's
again.
why it's so special. And I think what's beautiful too is as you were sharing, I think I don't think we've housed a conversation yet around spirituality and how that connects to submissive space. So it was really cool to hear you share that and watch how it resonated with those that are sharing camera and were able to hear those words and kind of integrate them into themselves. So I feel like what you shared was really connective.
Yeah, I struggled for a long time because of not having dynamics that look like a by the book sort of a thing, right? Before I got okay with the fact that, you know, none of my relationships have to look like anybody's playbook. But one day what came to me, this was a revelation in terms of my submission, was understanding that, like, I use the three-letter term God very loosely to refer to the power in the universe. For those of you who are triggered by it, I apologize. It's just a shorthand for me to talk about that. But that's my dominant, capital D dominant, is the power in the universe. That, you know, not gendered, not human, but that power that's in the universe. And my submission is to be of service to God and to all of God's children, wherever I'm able to do that.
That's awesome. And as you were sharing,
God and to all of God's children, wherever I'm able to do that.
That's awesome. And as you were sharing,
is a form of subspace. I would definitely say that. Absolutely. Is a form of subspace. I would definitely say that. Absolutely. I'm able to achieve a certain feeling of subspace. I can have happen for me in meditation. I'm always grateful. Achieve a certain feeling of subspace. I can have happen for me in meditation. I'm always grateful.
or is it like like an absence of not doing something before meditating?
Don't I wish, or I would do it that way all the time. No, I just, that's why they call meditation's a practice, it's not an arrival. And so I just, by working on it, there are some days where all the cylinders are firing, and it's really good, and then there's times when it's not. But there are moments where I achieve that subspace thing. But I can't tell you I know how or why that happens. So I just keep practicing.
I love it. Now, did you want to ask the next question?
Yes, because you love labels. No, I wrote this question. I'll just say it as I wrote it. As a switch, also known as someone who participates in or identifies as both dominant and submissive roles, do you believe that there is a dominant headspace equivalent to subspace? And what does your dominant headspace look and feel like, if so?
Yes, I believe that there is such a thing as dominant or top space. For me, let me see if I can find the words to differentiate it. Because there comes to be a singleness of focus, but it's in a very sort of, it's not that I'm not confident when I'm doing things or coming from a submissive place, but it's like the colors turn up a little bit. Like things are amplified a little bit while being very, very focused in the very, very moment. Like there's nothing but this very single moment while I'm in dominant space that has its own sort of, freedom, like the stuff we're talking about with subspace. I mean, any of these things, anything that can get me as focused on right this moment as I can get, brings me closer to any of this stuff, to God, to subspace, top space, any of it. The people around me. So being involved in like sort of dominance or dominant activities or whatever brings that up for me. Almost, it's like focus with like the lights come up. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Yeah.
that's how I experience it.
Someone said everything gets more clear and details are easier to see.
Yeah, that covers it.
And before we move into the last question, you all have gotten a chance to learn about Kat, aka Mama, on another level, and so I'd love to offer all of you the opportunity to ask any questions you may have. That'll allow you guys to dive a little bit deeper into her journey as well. But with our last question, do you or have you experienced subdrop?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And then, is there a dominant equivalent of dom drop? How do they differ, and what helps you mitigate the effects of either or both of these recovery periods?
Very early in, not even that early, like not in the big picture early, but some years ago, I did a fairly heavy scene as a bottom, and day or two later experienced what I had never heard of subdrop. No one had ever told me about it. And so, in all fairness, my life was in a lot of flux. My husband had passed away. I had been evicted from my home. I had a lot going on at the personal level. So I did this scene, and then about 36 hours later, I felt crazy. I felt panicky and upset, and like I didn't have my feet under me, and I didn't know where it came from. And so I reached out to the person who I had done the scene with, and what I basically got sent was an article on subdrop. And I was like, and then I read it, and I was like, oh, this exactly describes what I'm feeling right now. This is exactly the right time frame. And it's like, and so to me, what mitigates it is knowing, right? Like I experience it now. Probably the closest thing to top drop or dom drop is con drop. Because for me, when I go to conventions or events, I'm facilitating, I'm teaching, I'm very much in a dominant headspace. But after doing it for several days in the context of an event, I go home, and if I'm not careful, about 36 hours later, I'm like a sobbing mess on the floor, and I have no idea why. When I can remember that I'm having drop, it makes it okay. It doesn't mean I don't feel it. It just means the extra added layer of crazy that comes from not knowing where it's coming from can roll off, and then I can just be sad or weepy, get my chocolate, take an extra nap, and wait for it to pass, as opposed to being a squirrel in a gerbil wheel trying to figure out what's wrong with me, which amps it up and makes it 10 times worse. So a lot of times the biggest thing is to just remember that I'm in it and that I have a reason for being in it.
There's a question. Can I read it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think dom or sub drop is related to a sharp decrease in something like dopamine?
Oh, am I, equipped to tell you which neurochemical? It absolutely is. It's a neurochemical dump. I'm quite certain. But I don't know which ones and in what order and why. For some people it's like 5 hours, and for some people it's 3 days, and But yes, I'm sure it's neurochemical.
There's another question. How do those of you who are poly deal with multiple types of drop happening at the same time? And how can your partners help you with that?
No, we have no idea what that means. We have no idea what you're talking about.
We don't know, like, it's hard because you say, like, what helps mitigate it is knowing that it's sub drop, but it's like all of us have sub drop or dom drop at the same time. How do we know
I don't know
that?
who's helping anybody. Like there's a phrase that comes to mind, right? There's a woman who's Bené Brown. I don't know any of you if you know her. She does stuff on TikTok or whatever. And she told a story once about how she and her husband take care of one another by knowing that between you have to have 100. Like, so on great days you're 50-50, but on some days you come home and you're 20, and then the other person can say, oh, I got your 80. But there's some days you come home and you're like, I'm 20 and you're 20, and the only thing we can do on those days is decide how we're gonna be nice to each other, right? And so that's what this is like. When we're all dropping, all we can do is decide what we need to do to be kind to one another while we wait for it to pass.
There's another question in the chamber. How do you, being both dominant and submissive type, how do you experience and navigate the switch between the mindsets, and how do you prepare those headspaces inside and outside of the bedroom? Any advice on this?
Well, I did have a good example of that at this last event, right? I went into the Saturday night event that we did with a dance card where I was supposed to be the dominant in a scene, and then in a very casual, loosey-goosey way, I ended up being a bottom to this rope scene first, and then subspace happened so intensely I couldn't get out of it, and so that person, who's also a switch, had someone else at the event that they wanted to top, and so when I went to them and said, I don't know, why don't you do that scene? And they looked at me, they're like, yes, because I don't want to be where you are now. And then they ran off and did the topping, because it is hard. It's harder to go from bottom to top for me than it is from top to bottom. And so my takeaway from Saturday was, if I'm going to have both sides of the slash on my dance card, I need to top first and bottom second if I'm going to do it in the same few hours of a time span. If the time in between is greater than that and the people are greater than that, then it's not that difficult to navigate. It's just navigating it when it's in close proximity time-wise that, my advice is top first and bottom second.
That's a cool one, because as I'm listening, I'm like, intimately, I'm different than I am in power exchange and energy exchange.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can't bottom and then top if I'm bottoming for like a sensual touch and sensation session or scene. But intimately, I can switch easy, without a hiccup, right? And it's like, I guess there's obviously varying degrees to that. Then you have the power exchange in the professional realm, right? If you're middle management, right? That's another place. Or if you're the sibling, the middle child, right? There's a lot of alternating between dom and sub, lead and follow in all those circumstances. Thank you for that question. That was a really good question.
Yeah, we may have to steal that for more of our hot seats. That was a good one. I think I would love to end on how we normally end our conversations. And so Beyond the Collar has a wide array of community, whether they're first starting, they're just learning about kink, and there's some that have been here for seasons and here for a while. What advice do you have for anyone that's seeking or exploring on their journey?
I don't know, I would say do it for yourself, right? Seek out what you want to seek out, learn what you want to learn, experience what you want to experience, because I think what happens is because, to be dominant means you need a submissive. To be submissive means there's an interdependence in order to have any of these dynamics. Nobody is dominant in an air capsule. Like, nobody's submissive on an island. Like, we only do this in connection with one another. So I think the trap in that is feeling like if I'm going to be a submissive, I need to be the kind of submissive you want me to be, right? Mm-hmm. Or I can do the same thing, especially when I'm new. If I'm feeling wanting to be on the dominant side, I can still get caught up in being the dominant you want me to be, mm-hmm. right? And I think that the pathway to authenticity in this realm is to stay focused on what do I want to be? What does it mean to me? And not to where you don't care about your partners or you don't take into account other people's needs and thoughts and feelings. We absolutely do. But I think that there's there's a possibility of losing ourselves a little bit in favor of what do other people think or want, or what would it mean to show up at an event and look a certain kind of way, or what do I need to do for people to see me as a real submissive or people to see me as a real dominant? It's like we don't need any of those things. We just need to be on our journey where we are. You don't have to be ahead of anybody, or you don't have to worry about being behind anybody. You just take your journey a little bit at a time and know that wherever you are, you're good, you're okay.
To use an earlier analogy, it's putting a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah. So that's what advice I would give.
Well, we're so glad that you came and hung out with us in our call, and we're open and shared just an added layer of you. And so what we ask our community to do is welcome you into our growing tribe. So everyone throw hearts for Mama Cat as she shared just pieces of herself tonight. And so, Mama, where can they find you?
Well, you can find me under all things Kink Collective. So Kink Collective Instagram, kinkcollective.net. I also have my own Instagram, which is a little bit of a mouthful. It's Miss_Kitty_Cat, capital M, capital K, capital C. That's on Instagram is the same thing, Miss_Kitty_Cat_NYC, as if that weren't even more of a mouthful. But anything Kink Collective, you can find me. Probably the easiest way to reach me is to just go to email me at kinkcollectivenyc@gmail. That's like the most direct way to get me anytime you want to talk to me. Just send me an email.
Or the website.
Or the website, kinkcollective.net. Absolutely. Didn't I say that already? Kinkcollective.net. You can do that too. And in fact, on kinkcollective.net is an email box. So you can go to the website and send me an email from there.
Say Kink Collective 10 times fast.
It's like saying Beetlejuice.
We have one more question.
Sure.
If you're open.
Yeah. What do we have time for?
Being a D-type 24/7, re-exploring S-type in the bedroom, how can one best navigate the switch from outside to inside the bedroom and then back to being a D-type?
I mean, that pretty well defines me. I don't, a nap, pretty much. Like if I'm being an S-type in the bedroom, if I take a nap and I wake up, I get up, I'm a D-type again.
That's kind of true. That's so true.
Genius.
Take a nap. That's so true.
That's pretty awesome and real.
I can't wait to snip this for social media and just get all the really good moments from these calls. So as we round out the hour, if you guys enjoyed the questions around subspace, Natalie has put another month together full of fun. Nat, did you want to talk about what they could expect this month?
Yes, so we have 3 more weeks of topics, all revolving headspace and submission. So next week we're going to be talking about subspace and understanding your own personal subspace. It's going to be a very fun processing session for Mary and I, and for anyone else who wants to join us. And then next week, after next week, we're going to be talking about sub-drop, and the topic is processing and navigating sub-drop. And then for the final week of August, the topic is the mind-body-spirit connection within submission.